While all my classmates were determined to work hard for a year to get into Tsinghua or Peking University, I accidentally fell in love with an online friend. We met in a game, and he was the only one who didn't mind my lack of skills and helped me through the levels.
Cheerful, I can't believe he doesn't mind my terrible gaming skills.
As our studies became more demanding, we played less, but we chatted more. Despite never having met, there was an inexplicable sense of familiarity. I had to believe it was fate. Predestined fate.
Hopeful, he shared his joys with me, comforted me in my sorrows, and even helped me with my studies, rivaling any professional teacher. In less than 6 months, I was completely smitten. I, like you.
Not wanting to leave any regrets, I mustered the courage to say these 3 words to a boy I had never met, right at the start of my senior year.
Serious, but you need to focus on your studies now. Be good, I'll wait for you at Peking University.
Hopeful, you promised to wait for me. You have to keep your word.
Serious, yes, I will.
His voice was low and magnetic, like a magnet that firmly held my heart, never to be removed. For this promise, I worked hard for an entire year, and during that year, we barely kept in touch.
Excited, when I received my acceptance letter from Peking University, I was eager to share my joy with him, but it was as if he had vanished into thin air. He never replied to my messages again.
Had something happened to him? Or was there some other reason?
Sad, I watched my phone screen light up and dim repeatedly, from hope to disappointment, and finally, to utter despair. My emotions were unusually low for the entire vacation, and the university I had longed for no longer seemed so appealing. A liar! I would never believe in love again.
On my first day at the university, I ran into someone familiar. The person welcoming new students at Peking University was the student council president, John.
John! It's been so long.
Emily! What are you looking at? Haven't seen me for over a year and think I've gotten even more handsome?
John squinted his almond-shaped eyes slightly, with a unique charm.
Do you know someone named James?
I put my hands behind my back, leaned toward him, and smiled cunningly.
Who? Your friend?
My boyfriend.
Is he more handsome than me?
Yes, I nodded vigorously, even though I had never seen him and he refused to send a photo, but I couldn't lose face. Much more handsome than you.
You know someone more handsome than me?
I felt there was a bit of mockery and teasing in John's words, but his voice was as gentle as ever.
As soon as you arrive, you're looking for him. Are you on a quest to find your husband?
The last 2 words, he deliberately bent down, closing the distance between us, speaking very slowly and softly.
None of your business!
I rolled my eyes at him, turned my head away, and didn't speak again.
I also want to ask you for a favor. My parents are coming to Beijing in a few days. Can you pretend to be my girlfriend to stop them from introducing girls to me?
I have someone I like.
I know, it's just acting.
John flashed a smile that could charm anyone.
You're not afraid of actually falling for me, are you?
I looked at his infuriating expression, and 1,000 curses floated through my mind. So what if he needed a fake girlfriend? Who's afraid of whom? Don't regret it later. Fine. I patted my chest and assured him, your problem is my problem. Leave it to me. The next day, John's phone number and WeChat ID were posted on the campus dating column, with a big note in parentheses, looking for a girlfriend. I agreed to pretend to be his girlfriend, but I never said it had to be me. I walked past the dating column, feeling quite pleased with my handiwork. Imagining John's frantic state, my mood instantly lifted. Sure enough, within half a day, John cornered me at the cafeteria entrance.
Kid, what do you mean by this?
John's questioning voice was hoarse and low, not angry but rather flirtatious, full of allure as he slowly approached me, cornering me. "I'm just helping you out. The campus is so big, with all kinds of girls, there's bound to be one for you." I widened my eyes and glared at him warily, afraid he might devour me whole.
"So, I should thank you." John bent down, leaning close to my ear, his voice emotionless. "Are you saving yourself for that guy named James?"
Hearing him mention James, I instantly felt like my tail had been stepped on. "Yes, I do like him. Do you have a problem with that?" With that, I pushed him away and walked off. He just had to bring that up, definitely on purpose. But as I passed by John, I felt like he was hurt. After all, it was me who played a prank on him, yet I was the one throwing a tantrum. Considering how John had always taken care of me since we were kids, I reflected on my actions, wondering if I had gone too far. John was a prominent figure at Peking University, his influence undeniable. I heard that ever since his phone number was published, his phone had been ringing nonstop with messages and calls, forcing him to block numbers, and eventually, turn off his phone. Feeling even more guilty, I wanted to apologize, but his phone was indeed off. Reaping what I sowed. With no other option, I went to his classroom to find him, only to be chased out before seeing him. Apparently, too many people had been looking for him, disrupting classes, so his class banned any girls from entering to find John. Despite being so popular, he hadn't found a girlfriend in 3 years of college. Just as I was pondering how to apologize, James, who had been missing for a while, suddenly messaged me. He explained that his phone had issues, which was why he hadn't contacted me, and suggested meeting at the bench by the pond near the north gate of the campus at 2 p.m. the next day. Happiness came so suddenly that I stared at my phone in a daze for a long time before believing it was real. He shared his joys with me, comforted me in my sorrows, and even helped me with my studies, rivaling any professional teacher. In less than 6 months, I was completely smitten.
I like you.
Not wanting to leave any regrets, I mustered the courage to say these 3 words to a boy I had never met, right at the start of my senior year.
But you need to focus on your studies now. Be good, I'll wait for you at Peking University.
You promised to wait for me. You have to keep your word.
Yes, I will.
His voice was low and magnetic, like a magnet that firmly held my heart, never to be removed. For this promise, I worked hard for an entire year, and during that year, we barely kept in touch. When I received my acceptance letter from Peking University, I was eager to share my joy with him, but it was as if he had vanished into thin air. He never replied to my messages again. Had something happened to him? Or was there some other reason? That day, I didn't know if it was because I had been sitting for too long or because I was angry at him, but when I stood up, my leg cramped, and I couldn't take a single step. In the end, he carried me back to the dormitory. As the sun set, the senior carried the junior back to the dormitory from the pond. This picturesque scene quickly spread across the entire campus like autumn leaves swept by the wind. Since that day, no matter where I went or what I did, there were always people staring at me and gossiping as if I were a monkey in a zoo.
Good eye, young lady. Make the most of it.
Who said I had anything to do with him? We have nothing to do with each other.
Emily, a delicate figure, suddenly appeared, blocking my way. Judging by her attire, she was probably a senior.
I'm sorry to bother you. Please let John go. Give him back to me.
What? He's not an object. If you like him, just tell him.
Her tone was so dramatic, clearly a master at acting. I didn't want to stay with such a drama queen. Just as I was about to turn around, I heard her start crying.
Damn, this was the first time in my life that I made a girl cry without doing anything.
How can you say that about him? We're classmates. I've known him for 3 years. Don't I know what kind of person he is? You can't use him to boost your own popularity.
What did I say about him? Use him?
Drama queens always have tricks up their sleeves. I looked around and sure enough, I saw John. The girl didn't wait for me to react and grabbed my hand.
You don't even know him. How could you really like him? Stop clinging to him.
I looked at the tearful girl and didn't shake her off aggressively. Instead, I smiled gently.
Senior, I know everything has its order. But when I met him, he was still a little kid running around with no pants on. I have photos. Do you want to see?
The girl stopped crying, her mouth half open, eyes wide, looking at me as if I were lying.
So many people are watching. Close your mouth, or no one will want you in the future.
How can you be so shameless?
Why do I need shame? My face is just right for you. We've been eating from the same bowl and sleeping in the same bed since we were kids. Even if you have an opinion, it doesn't matter. But if you can travel back in time to be the third wheel, I don't mind.
The girl was furious and on the verge of tears. She glared at me and ran away. John had been standing not far away, arms crossed, leaning against a tree, watching the show. When he saw me walking towards him, he finally stood up straight.
You helped me once. I helped you once. We're even. Find someone else to pretend to be your girlfriend.
You blocked my romantic prospects. You should make it up to me. How is this even?
John, do you have any shame? Was he really going to cling to me?
Didn't you just say, why do I need shame? My face is just right for you.
He shared his joys with me, comforted me in my sorrows, and even helped me with my studies, rivaling any professional teacher. In less than 6 months, I was completely smitten.
I, like you.
Not wanting to leave any regrets, I mustered the courage to say these 3 words to a boy I had never met, right at the start of my senior year.
But you need to focus on your studies now. Be good, I'll wait for you at Peking University.
You promised to wait for me. You have to keep your word.
Yes, I will.
His voice was low and magnetic, like a magnet that firmly held my heart, never to be removed. For this promise, I worked hard for an entire year, and during that year, we barely kept in touch. When I received my acceptance letter from Peking University, I was eager to share my joy with him, but it was as if he had vanished into thin air. He never replied to my messages again.
Had something happened to him? Or was there some other reason?
I watched my phone screen light up and dim repeatedly, from hope to disappointment, and finally to utter despair. My emotions were unusually low for the entire vacation, and the university I had longed for no longer seemed so appealing.
A liar! I would never believe in love again.
Mr. and Mrs. Smith came to Beijing for a visit. They didn't stay long, but every evening they would take us out for dinner and even made sure to drop us back at school. They held my hand, giving countless reminders, and finally, they didn't forget to push me towards John, making us look like one big happy family. Students were coming and going at the school gate, and who knows how many people witnessed this scene. The rumors about John and me spread like wildfire. Meeting the parents? Isn't that a done deal? From then on, I gained a new title, the Student Council President's wife.
Your parents did this on purpose, didn't they?
I scrutinized John, watching his expression closely, afraid to miss any detail.
Yes, you figured it out. Their son's partner is their favorite girl, how could they not announce it to the world? They almost sent invitations to every student.
But you haven't even graduated from college yet, and there's a long road ahead.
I reminded him, thinking about how flaunting this could affect him if he met someone he truly liked in the future.
If I meet someone, I'll bring her to you. She needs your approval, after all.
Get lost.
I threw the book in my hand at him. Approval, my foot. Was he planning to have a harem or something? Another book followed. Within 2 days, rumors about John being henpecked spread like wildfire. I felt wronged and started seriously thinking that I was being set up by his whole family, with no one to complain to. Maybe it's true that bad deeds get punished. Just a few days after Mr. and Mrs. Smith left, John sprained his ankle playing basketball. It swelled up like a big bun. This had nothing to do with me, but soon someone came running over.
Jane, John's ankle is swollen. Aren't you going to check on him? John keeps mentioning you. Hurry and go see him. The school doctor said he needs to stay in bed for 3 days, so Jane, you'll have to bring him meals.
I could already imagine John's triumphant smirk. A wise woman doesn't fight with a man, and besides, out of respect for Mr. and Mrs. Smith, I couldn't really ignore him. I took out my phone and dialed his number.
Is there someone with you?
No, it's just me.
Did someone confess to you?
John suddenly laughed.
With you around, who would dare confess to me?
What did he mean? He was using me as a shield, and in the end, it would be my fault. I hung up the phone after a few words, but the girl's voice kept echoing in my mind. John lied to me. No matter what reason John had for misleading me, the feeling of not being trusted made me very uncomfortable.
I still helped him get meals and had his roommate take them back, but I never contacted him again or responded to his messages.
3 days later, John hobbled and blocked me outside the classroom door.
Why are you giving me the cold shoulder?
We hadn't contacted each other for the entire senior year, and you didn't feel depressed from the lack of communication.
I didn't bother to beat around the bush and directly asked him.
Do you have someone you like?
He looked at me with gentle eyes, full of emotion, and nodded.
Is it the girl who confessed to you that day?
He nodded again. My heart sank further, a wave of indescribable loss, empty and stuffy, even faintly painful.
Then you better make it clear to her that there's nothing between us.
Yes, she knows.
It was only natural, as if it were a matter of course.
Since you have a girl you like, you should focus on her and never contact me again.
After saying that, I turned to leave, but John grabbed my wrist.
Are you jealous?
He even laughed.
Are you crazy? Who's jealous?
Classmates walking out of the classroom turned to look. I tried to pull my hand back, but John's grip was firm and I couldn't move.
Calm down, don't make a scene.
He didn't avoid suspicion and leaned closer to me, speaking softly.
Didn't you find that voice familiar?
The confession wasn't directed at me, so why would I find it familiar? I frowned, ready to retort, but suddenly realized that the voice did sound familiar.
Was it someone I knew? It didn't seem like it. Among the people I knew, none of their voices matched.
As I thought about it, I suddenly realized.
That voice. It was mine.
I slowly turned my gaze to John, shocked, disbelieving, and finally, filled with intense anger.
I sent that voice message to James. Why do you have it?
Questions I had never considered before suddenly flooded my mind.
Why did James feel so familiar? Why did he know so much about me? Why did he appear and disappear at such convenient times?
It turned out that James never existed.
I had mistaken someone else's manipulation for destined fate. I had been heartbroken and waited for him for so long.
I can explain.
John saw my face turn pale and urgently wanted to speak. He knew I wouldn't accept it easily once I found out.
I don't want to hear your explanation. I just want to know, did you intentionally stand me up that day?
I didn't stand you up. I was there the whole time.
Yes, watching me foolishly be played by you, laughing behind my back.
Thinking about that day, I was so angry I felt like exploding.
I don't remember offending you. Why did you do this to me? Jerk.
Growing up, I had always seen John as a gentle big brother. Today was the first time I found him so detestable and hateful. That afternoon, it rained heavily. Feeling frustrated, I returned to the dormitory early. John called me countless times. I didn't answer any of them, nor did I open his messages.
Emily, did you have a fight with John? He's been standing in the rain, waiting for you to come down.
Standing in the rain? At first, I didn't want to care, but I couldn't help it. After hearing this, I couldn't stay in the dormitory with a clear conscience. After struggling internally for a while, I finally found an excuse for myself and rushed out of the dormitory with an umbrella. I was just afraid that something might happen to him, not because I cared about him, and certainly not because I forgave him. Sure enough, John was standing in the pouring rain, quietly looking in the direction of the dormitory. When he saw me walking over with an umbrella, his pale lips curved into a faint smile.
Why are you standing in the rain like this? You're soaked and freezing. Go back and drink some ginger tea.
You said you wouldn't ignore me.
John sounded extremely aggrieved, like a pitiful little rabbit. It takes time to build up such skills. He had been practicing this since we were kids.
You also said you wouldn't lie to me.
I didn't lie to you. I really like you. When I asked you if you would be my girlfriend after you graduated from high school, you said we were too familiar and you didn't feel that way.
I stopped in my tracks, remembering that I had indeed said those words. I was in my first year of high school, and John was giving me a ride on his bike. I forgot what we were talking about, but he suddenly asked me that question. I was a bit stunned and didn't know how to respond, so I said that.
I had to approach you in a different way. If you could like him, why couldn't you give me a chance?
James, an old friend. What a thoughtful name. I sighed inwardly. Before I could say anything, I saw his two roommates approaching. When they saw me, they turned around and left.
Let's go. John's getting scolded by his girlfriend again.
What do you mean again? Do I scold people every day?
Come on, I'll take you back.
You're not mad anymore.
I'm still mad. It all depends on your future behavior.
John was overjoyed. We had held hands before, but this was the first time we held hands as a couple. He was clearly nervous, tentatively hooking his fingers around mine. Seeing that I didn't resist, he tightly wrapped his cold hand around mine. My heart was pounding, almost jumping out of my throat. To say I wasn't upset at all would be a lie, but I had figured it out. The reason I liked James was because of my feelings for John. We were just too familiar, and I didn't realize my own feelings. I always knew that John's kindness to me was unmatched. He would stand up for me when I was bullied and share the consequences when I made mistakes. I proudly told everyone that he was my brother. But I didn't know that he didn't want to be my brother. Our love began just like that. It wasn't as dramatic as others, but the steady and enduring feeling seemed more suitable for me, making me feel warm every day. He graduated 2 years before me and said he would find a stable home for us. Once I graduated from college, we would get engaged. At the engagement party, Mrs. Smith held my hand and sighed.
When John was in college and said he wanted a girlfriend, I was somewhat reluctant. We all thought he was too young to date seriously. But then you came along, Emily, and we couldn't say no.
Weren't they the ones urging him to find a girlfriend? I glared at John with a look that demanded an explanation.
So, it was all premeditated, step by step, digging a pit for me to fall into.
Mom.
John gently nudged Mrs. Smith and gave her a look. Mrs. Smith suddenly realized.
Oh, my memory! I forgot, back then he was still pretending to be interested. Emily didn't even like him at first.
And just like that, I was tricked into becoming his bride. This trick lasted a lifetime. Kindergarten, I hid behind the slide, watching the teacher complain to Mrs. Smith with a displeased look.
John is an older child now, but he was chasing and hitting the younger kids. You should educate him more at home. If something happens, it won't be good for anyone.
John, why were you chasing and hitting others?
Mrs. Smith bent down, her voice calm, without blame or favoritism.
He bullied Emily. I can't let him bully Emily.
Really?
John nodded. Mrs. Smith then looked at me. I was young at the time and somewhat scared, not knowing what to do, so I just stared blankly.
Teacher, I can't educate him on this. That child lives next door to us, and they've always played well together. Naturally, he can't stand seeing her being bullied.
Emily, don't be afraid.
The teacher tried to explain.
John's mom, there might be a misunderstanding. The child who was hit is usually well-behaved and wouldn't bully others.
I saw him push Emily.
He took 2 steps forward, grabbed my hand, and said,
Let's go home.
At that time, I didn't know much, and many things weren't deeply imprinted in my memory. I only knew that besides Dad and Mom, this brother was the best to me.